In the San Juan Tech Meetup, Mr. Ken K.
Wow, this is a very exciting moment for me. I've never seen so many people in such an elegant space for a tech meetup before. I think for those of you who've been to tech meetups across the United States, you know what I mean. Usually it's in a warehouse, and the people are not very well dressed, but this is amazing. Let me start by telling you that I'm a new resident of Puerto Rico. I've been here about 3 months, and I love it. The beaches are beautiful. The weather is amazing. Nobody talks about the weather in Puerto Rico because it's always the same. You know, back where I come from in New Jersey, you know, it changes. It's cold. It's bitter, especially this winter when there was snow 2 feet high. But this is not the first time for me in Puerto Rico. I was here as a teenager in the 1970s. And at that time, I went snorkeling for the first time off of the beach at Caribe Hilton. And it was a magical time for me. I cannot express to you how amazing the snorkeling was at that time. The moray eels, the lobsters, the fish, of course, the squid. And thereafter, I would try to re-experience that magic in other places. Traveled to Mexico, Australia, Hawaii, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. Nothing came close. And so for all these years, I had this precious memory in my mind of Puerto Rico. And then years later, about 15, 17 years later, I happened to be on a business trip down here. And I was staying at a nice hotel, going to sleep. In the middle of the night, about 3 o'clock, I was awakened to the sound of a screaming peacock. And in that instant, I realized that I was at the same hotel that I stayed at some 17 years ago as a teenager. And I was so excited. I was so excited because now I could realize my dream of re-experiencing that magic as a teenager. So I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I came down, rented the equipment, and I went to the reef only to discover that the reef had largely died off. And it was a crushing moment for me because I didn't even, I couldn't figure out whether I had imagined that magic or it was a real experience because nowhere that I went, I couldn't capture that magic again. But it exists in my mind and it stays here. And for me to come back here and to express my appreciation and give back to Puerto Rico is an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Now, my background is that of an entrepreneur. I'm a software entrepreneur, built up a company in the 90s, struggled, and I want to make that very clear to you that being an entrepreneur is a struggle. As those of you who are know, it's an emotional struggle. It can be very taxing on those who are around you. And I understand that you can feel the lows and highs, especially during those early years. So the reason I say that is I want to share with you my experiences as an entrepreneur to try to help you through that early difficult process. I'm also an ecosystem contributor in the sense that I've been involved as an angel investor. I've been involved in hackathons, in many different types of events, to support a tech innovation ecosystem in New Jersey. And when I came down here, my first thought was, what am I going to do? Am I going to be on the beach every day, taking in the sun? I quickly realized that I had to figure out some way to make a contribution. And I was extremely lucky to have found Isabel and the others on my board of advisors who guided me toward this concept of a tech meetup. Now, if you don't know already, it's crazy out there. It's crazy in the sense that in the tech space, the valuations for young companies is astronomical. Companies like Uber, Snapchat, and at the same time, there are thousands of accelerators and incubators churning out more startups. And this is happening not only in the United States, but around the world. Even governments, cities, states, countries, like Startup Chile, Brazil, European countries, are all engaged in this global war for talent. Is it a bubble? Well, it might be. We don't really know until it pops, whether it's a bubble like what we experienced back in the late 90s and 2000. But I'm going to tell you a story that makes me believe we're close to a bubble. And it was sent to me by Marcos Polanco, who is our man in Silicon Valley, who keeps us up to date on everything that's going on. He sent me a link to something called the Menorca Millennials Startup Quarantine. It's exclusively for second-time entrepreneurs. You get to spend 20 days on a beautiful Mediterranean island, and there are 20 teams competing for top prize, which includes some investment capital. Now, when I looked at the video, it reminded me of some reality TV show like Survivor, where you're thrown to this island and you're quarantined in the sense that there's no communication with the outside world, no distractions, and they compete to get the top prize. And Marcos said, hey, we can do this in Puerto Rico. We can do this on Vieques or Culebra, just throw a bunch of entrepreneurs and let's see what happens. Now, okay, hold it. My reaction was quite different. I started laughing because the absurd levels that these organizations are going to try to encourage innovation, to create a new class of entrepreneurs and to create wealth is at an extreme. And if you see this video, you know what I mean. It's got this very moving music and a lot of young faces, all energized and doing things. And I think it's easy to get caught up in all this energy, in all this hype, and to think, we should be doing that. We should be doing what everyone else is doing. Just keep throwing money at this and maybe it'll happen. I think there's a different way. So let me go back to what the San Juan Tech Meetup is all about. I was first exposed to the idea of a meetup when I went to the New York Tech Meetup some 4 or 5 years ago. And the first thing about this meetup that you have to know is that it's always sold out, and you have to go online to get tickets, not at one time, but they sell it in 3 tranches to give everybody a fair chance. You buy it online, $10 a ticket, and then you show up at this huge performing arts center at NYU, which holds about 900 people. It's packed. And the energy is palpable, similar to what we have tonight, in the sense that people are walking around, talking, and sharing ideas, getting really excited, sort of like a rock concert. You know, before the performance, people are just buzzing, running around. But then I noticed something interesting. They're not all tech people. I thought, wait a minute, this is a tech meetup, but they're not tech people. A lot of people are just working on Wall Street, or on Madison Avenue, or at an insurance company, and they dream about being the next Mark Zuckerberg. So they come down to feed their dreams. And some people are creatives who work as artists, and others are just people, students, normal people. And it occurred to me that tech has become a cultural phenomenon. It's no longer about tech. It's much bigger than that. It's what everybody wants a piece of, because they see not only potential wealth in being associated with it, they pull out their smartphone and think, wait a minute, how do I get a piece of this culture? I'm not an entrepreneur, but I want to understand what's going on, because this is changing everything. And so they come to a meetup, not necessarily to create a business, but they just want to share and connect with each other and talk about technology. And I see nothing wrong with that. So basically, it's a monthly networking meeting, networking event for the creative economy, which broadly includes artists, designers, students, academics. Actually, it's open to all. I want to be as inclusive as possible. We're not just about tech people. We're open to all. Anybody who's interested in learning about what's going on out there, about the tsunami that's hitting us, with change after change that's imposed on us that we need to better understand, should come and share. And while we're here, we can learn about the technologies, we can learn about entrepreneurship, design, and many other topics driven by the membership. And of course, we want to be nurturing innovation in Puerto Rico. So as Eduardo mentioned, we have a rock star advisory board. I cannot imagine a better board than what I've been fortunate enough to assemble. These people are not the kind of board members who sit around and share a thought once in a while. They are actively engaged in the ecosystem and building it out from various angles. And they have been enormously supportive and important in executing tonight's event as well as future events. So if you run a company, I think you would be very envious of a board like that who could guide you and connect you to the right people and resources on the island. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. One of the key themes that I want to build on is this idea of investable. What is investable? Well, you have an idea, but how does the idea become an investable business? Now, investable is not a binary event. You're not either investable or not. You may be more investable because you've done the right things, but only to certain people. Certain people may think that you are great and will put money behind you. Others will not. So it's not binary. It's very difficult to pin down exactly what investable means because it means different things to different investors. And I am not by any means suggesting that all companies should seek investment. In fact, I didn't. I was able to build up my company organically, mainly because I couldn't figure out how to raise money. Whenever I needed money, I couldn't convince myself that I could tell a compelling story to raise money. And by the time I didn't need money and people were calling me about giving me money, I didn't need it. So there's this black box, a mysterious black box that holds the secret to making a company investable. And this is what I'd like to have all of us better understand. Whether or not you become an entrepreneur, whether or not you actually raise money, the idea of focusing on investables clarifies a lot of things that you do and that you must do as entrepreneurs. Now, the great thing about this concept is that here in Puerto Rico, we have great organizations that will help you along the way. Many of these organizations are represented in my board and are working together to support the community of creative players. So you are extremely lucky in having these organizations behind you. What we can do as the San Juan Tech community is hopefully align the activities of some of these or help support these activities by working with the creative entrepreneurs. So this is the audience participation part of my presentation. We're going to do a little vocabulary quiz to figure out whether you as a community understand some of the key concepts behind investable or not. So raise your hand if you know the answer to this question. What is pivot? Yes.
It's when you start in one direction
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Changing direction. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes, changing direction after discovering a better opportunity. And this happens all the time. I don't have any numbers, but I would expect more than 50% of startups pivot at one point or another, which raises the question from an investor's point of view, what exactly is the investor investing in? If the idea keeps changing, what is it that the investor's putting the money behind? Well, entrepreneurs think, well, it's all about the idea, but actually it's not. It's about the entrepreneur. And you will hear this over and over again by venture capitalists and angels. It's much more about the entrepreneur because investors know there's going to be a pivot. So why would they put their money behind the idea when the idea is going to change? Which means that what you need to do if you want to become investable is to become better entrepreneurs. Okay, much more than the idea, because ideas are very common. Whatever you're thinking right now that you think is original, somebody else has that idea out there. I can guarantee that. But if you can execute, if you're the entrepreneur who can put it all together, and by entrepreneur I mean somebody who can create something from nothing, right? If you can do that, then you have a chance to succeed. Okay, next question. What is pre-money? Right, okay, very good. No, this is not your state before you become rich, the pre-money state. It's the proposed value of a startup before an investment. And what's interesting about this is the counter term, which is post-money. And the idea is that the value of the company is pre-money, and then you get the investment, and the value becomes post-money, which equals pre-money plus the investment, right? That's simple math. Actually, if that is the situation that you are in, you have a bad investor. Because what you're looking for from an investor is not the value of the capital, but a lot more than that. You're looking for connections, you're looking for synergies. So if your post-money is equal to pre-money plus the capital, you've made a mistake. It should be a lot more than that. In your mind, you should think post-money is pre-money plus the capital plus a lot more. Otherwise, you shouldn't do that deal. Okay, this is just a simple idea, but something you need to understand about how to become investable. What are the 4 F's? This is a little harder. Anybody? Okay. What's that? That doesn't count. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've had to go over this with a startup. This is the source of capital before the company becomes investable. Founders, family, friends, and fools, okay? A startup, almost by definition, is not investable because it's got nothing. It's got no track record, no revenue, no customers. How can you expect an investor to put money behind it? Of course, we hear in the news stories of how some tiny startup raised millions of dollars and they were off to the races. That is an extremely small fraction of a fraction. When you get started, this is your source of capital. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that is fact. Okay, now I'm going to talk about something very important. I think we should have in our DNA a sense of social responsibility. Now, it seems rather odd. Here we are at the first event of the San Juan Tech Meetup, and we're already talking about social responsibility. This is what you do when you get established and you find some charitable cause like education for underprivileged kids or something like that. No, I want to put this into the DNA of the San Juan Tech Meetup from the beginning. And I'm going to explain why. Okay, you know about the Adopt the Highway program. It's the program where you go and pick up trash because your name is on the highway. Okay? Why do you do it? Because you feel a sense of ownership. With your name there, you don't want to damage your reputation by allowing trash to accumulate in that stretch of highway. I would like the San Juan Tech Meetup to adopt a Puerto Rican digital highway, which needs a lot of cleanup, and I'm going to tell you why. One of the most frustrating things about coming to Puerto Rico is that the maps on my smartphone don't work. You know, I go to some countries like Central America, and I don't expect it to work. The phone system doesn't work. I can't make calls, so why should the map work? I come to Puerto Rico, and my cell phone works. Wow, it's great. We're in the United States. Great benefit of coming down here on vacation as opposed to other countries. But when I try to use the map, which is the most commonly used app on my phone, as well as I think statistically it's the most commonly used app on any smartphone, it doesn't work. To give you an example, I did a little search here on Google Maps for a restaurant near in the capital. And you can see the capital right in the middle there. And it says there's a Sizzler restaurant across the street. I can't find a Sizzler restaurant. It doesn't exist. And then there's a U-Save car and truck rental. That doesn't exist either. Royal Holiday Vacation Service. No, not there. And this investigation, that's in Caguas. I checked, that's in Caguas. Nothing on this map is accurate. Now, as a Puerto Rican, I consider myself Puerto Rican now. This is embarrassing. So this is an example of how the digital highway in Puerto Rico needs cleanup. Actually, it needs more than cleanup. I think there are lots of potholes that we have to fix. And there's somebody in this room who tried to do this when he first came, Jeff Lee. Where's Jeff? Jeff, there he is. I talked to him extensively. He tried to single-handedly fix this problem. But as he will tell you, it's an enormous job. And we got to figure out how to do this as a community. And what I really need is somebody to step up and lead this project. Oh, this, by the way, is the driverless car test in Puerto Rico. If you try to take directions from the Google map, you will surely get into an accident. Okay, next project is PR for PR, public relations for Puerto Rico. Now, before I came down 3 months ago, I did a lot of research online to make sure that I was getting into something that I was going to enjoy. And it was disturbing. The narrative about Puerto Rico is universally bad, starting with the government's fiscal problems, the recession, the 10-year recession, the brain drain, the crime, the drug trafficking. It was really bad. And in that narrative, when you read about Act 20 and 22, it sounds like an act of desperation, right? I mean, it's not natural to read this and think, do I really want to do this? If they're that desperate, and if it's that bad, I'm not sure I want to risk my life to do this. Well, I come down here, despite the bad narrative, and it's not that bad. Oh, here's an example of what I'm talking about. A travel tip for Vieques. Leave no valuable in the car and leave the doors unlocked. Why? Because the windows will be broken if it's locked. Remember, no bushes nearby, no thieves. Surrounded by bushes, surrounded by petty thieves. this is what people read about Puerto Rico. So before I come down here, I'm thinking, wow, I got to be really careful. I went to Vieques a couple times. None of this is true, as far as I can tell. Now, we have problems, for sure. But the reputation that Puerto Rico has is much worse than reality. And so I think, is there some way we can fix this? And some people will say, Puerto Ricans will say, well, that's just the way it is. There's nothing you can do about it. But there's actually one amazing example of how a country's reputation, an entire country's reputation, got turned around, and that's the country of Colombia. I think we all remember what Colombia used to be like. It was the land of Pablo Escobar and the narco mafia, the Medellin cartel, the Cali cartel, FARC, and kidnapping, on and on and on. But now, somehow, Colombia's a cool place. Cartagena is where you want to go on vacation. How did this happen? Well, they did a lot of good things in government to improve that country. But there was something even greater, and that's changing the global reputation of a country in that time. So, and I should also point out that there are two people in the room, Neville and Lena, right here. Lena's from Colombia, so she knows all about this. They know the Madison Avenue executive responsible for the Colombia reputation management account. Colombia didn't do it themselves. They had a company systematically manage their online reputation to turn it around. Now, if you look at online reputation management online, the techniques are pretty straightforward. Executing them is not easy, but the techniques are pretty straightforward. So the challenge to you as a community is, can we do this? Can we take on something like this and change the perception of Puerto Rico? That's an open question. Whether we can or cannot is an open question. What is not is that we have the ability to do this. And we have the energy and the savvy to be able to do this. If no more than just move the needle a little bit, I'm absolutely confident. We just need the leadership and a team to lead the community and execute on something like this. So in addition to these projects, I encourage you to come up with other projects. And these projects have to have three key attributes. First of all, it's got to be about the community. It's got to help all of us in a project that we can all be a part of, that we can support as the San Juan Tech Meetup, and that we can take credit for, ultimately. It's got to have an entrepreneurship component, and that's not difficult because anything you try to execute requires entrepreneurship and leadership. And it's got to have the potential to become a venture, and this is the tricky one. So through this experience, the leaders of the project hopefully will encounter an opportunity to create a startup business. Now think about the two examples I gave. The map example is one. Let's just think about that. We cannot be alone in having this problem with maps. I bet you there are dozens of other countries where this is a big problem. If we can figure out how to solve it, I think there may be an opportunity to take the technology, the organization, the business to other countries and make it happen. And that's completely up to the entrepreneur to do. And we would, as a community, support that. As far as the PR for PR, reputation management is well known, and there are many companies out there serving businesses and individuals. As far as I know, there's no company actually specializing in countries and municipalities. And even if there were, there may be opportunities to develop technologies and a platform that can be executed at much lower costs. So I'm just pointing that out as a way to look at these projects. It's not always about community, just about community. It has to be the intersection of these three circles that gives us sustainable efforts. Sustainable in the sense that if we can make it all come together and it becomes a business, then it has its own critical mass to keep going. The other thing this project does, this is one of my favorite, we're back to quiz time now. This is a movie quiz. Remember the movie Matrix, where Neo hooks himself into I guess that's the Matrix, a computer, and declares that he knows Kung Fu, okay? What does Morpheus say in response? Do you remember? Show me. That is the critical line. We can all learn by listening to other people, but entrepreneurship is not about listening, it's about executing. And ultimately, you need to show me that you've learned, right? And how do you do that? Well, these projects that I'm talking about, they're in a way an entrepreneurship challenge to you. If you can execute on that, then you have the possibility to execute on something else. And instead of becoming a second-time entrepreneur, as that Menorca project is looking for, you can gain the experience by executing on these projects with the benefits accruing to the community. So what's the project outcome? Well, it's either success or failure, right? Let's just simplify it and say those are the two outcomes. If it's successful, then everybody's benefiting. If it's a failure, you still benefit. Guess what? Failure is a badge of honor these days, right? Nobody fails and then disappears into the night. It doesn't happen like that. In the city of Austin, there was a recent article that the VCs and accelerators are very excited about opening up in Austin, Texas. Why? Because they have enough second-time entrepreneurs who are investable. We don't have enough second-time entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico yet. And we don't actually have to go through that expensive exercise of funding and failing many, many times. I think we can gain a lot of experience by working as a community on projects that are very clear in what it seeks to accomplish and which provides the entrepreneurship the environment to be able to learn. Of course, it can build resumes. To be able to execute something like this has enormous positive benefit to you. And just as an aside, I've done projects similar to this with two interns in the last few years. Both of them got offers from Google. Both of them turned it down to work for a smaller company. So I'm not guaranteeing that you'll have the same outcome, but whether or not you become an entrepreneur, an experience like this can be very beneficial to your resume. It connects you with the community, and ultimately that's of extreme value because through the community, through our community, you have access to resources that you could never have on your own. Now think back to the board that I talked about. Having a board like that working with you and guiding you is an opportunity that you really should take advantage of. We as a board are behind supporting your activities and helping the community, obviously. And through that relationship, you may be able to then find other connections and other opportunities for yourself. So the idea that I want to go back to is the idea of the San Juan Tech Meetup as a home. And that's not quite what a bloodthirsty capitalist would usually talk about. But I think it's important here that we celebrate success, but we honor failure. There's no failure. We encourage you to succeed, of course, but every failure is another milestone on your way to success. Think of it as a sandbox for learning entrepreneurship, to learn from each other. A sandbox, a little kid playing in the sandbox, learning about the real world, but in a very safe environment. And this is important. I think doing projects and working together, we want to encourage and support the idea of connecting with a global community of creatives. So we live in a very globalized world, and that's a cliche now, but let me tell you a story about how that manifested. I talked to a guy named Steve Welch, who is the founder of Dream Adventures, which is one of the premier accelerators. And he told me this interesting story. He was invited to tour about 10 different countries, each of whom wanted an accelerator just like Dream is. And so he went to places like Japan, China, Singapore, Israel, some European countries. And he reported to me that each place had unique characteristics as it relates to entrepreneurship. For example, he said, Singapore has an extremely high level of education and technical expertise. They have an ecosystem that's very vibrant. In Japan, the expertise is very high, but people are very risk averse. Culturally, the idea of failure is something that is unacceptable to most young people. And for that reason, he was not interested in setting up an accelerator in Japan. Culturally, it was not the right fit. In China, there's a strong sense of entrepreneurship and technical talent, but they tend to think very regionally. In other words, they want to serve their huge population in the surrounding province, and that's all they can think about. That also, by the way, applies here. I think we tend to think too regionally, too locally. In Israel, he found a very optimal combination of entrepreneurship and technical skills. Israel is such a small country, they tend to think about larger markets like Europe and America first. They don't even think about the local markets. So based on that, he decided to put accelerators in different countries, looking at not only the technical level of education, the entrepreneurship, and so on. Now, I know that people here believe there's some cultural challenges in creating an innovative ecosystem. I don't really believe that. I think it's about community and incentives being properly aligned. It remains to be seen, but I can't believe that there's something inherent about the Puerto Rican culture that is challenged by this new wave of innovation. In fact, I was told by one person that Puerto Ricans don't like to obey the law, and I actually thought that was very positive. I thought, wow, they're entrepreneurs. They're all entrepreneurs, right? And the other thing that I'll just mention is that as a home, I think we should be welcoming returning members. And I think it's unrealistic to think that Puerto Ricans who are talented will stay on this island forever, helping to support the economy. We need to connect them with the global economy. And if they find their best opportunity in Silicon Valley, we need to support that. But if we can create an environment where they're always welcome to come back and give back and allow that cycle to continue, then I think we will all be better off. So this is my call to action. I need volunteers. I need volunteers to help organize events like this in future. And the event organizers meeting is here on the 22nd. I also need volunteers to step up and propose projects. And that includes the two that I mentioned, but any other projects that you can think of I would highly encourage. Now, this big move I made down to Puerto Rico is very reminiscent of my move to Princeton. I moved to Princeton in the mid-'80s, just when Senator Bhatia was graduating from Princeton. And one thing I noticed is that the people in Princeton are really smart. I moved into this house, and everybody around me had advanced degrees. Even the old lady across the street, who used to be a high school principal, was sharp as a tack. She was 80 years old, extremely impressive. But one day I met a guy at the supermarket, and this is a picture of him. This is the actual picture of the guy. And he had this blank stare. He stood in front of the supermarket. He wasn't begging for money. He was just standing there, and he would smile once in a while, but he just didn't do anything. So I assumed that he was, I'll call him the village underachiever. And it was at the same time that I was trying to build my business and going through the ups and downs and sometimes feeling really bad about myself. But then I'd go to the supermarket and see this guy, and I would think, well, at least I'm doing better than him. And that would give me some comfort. Sometimes I would see him wearing this hideous orange and black jacket, riding his bicycle in the pouring rain. And I would think, wow, at least I'm doing better than this guy. And then about 5 years later, I saw a newspaper article about this guy. Now, the parallel here, before I tell you who he is that I've met some extraordinary people, very smart people here. So in many ways, I'm leading a parallel experience, meeting all these smart people in Puerto Rico, just as I did in Princeton. And so then I open up the newspaper one day, and I see an article about this guy. His name is John Nash. He was a former Princeton mathematician and economist. The movie Beautiful Mind is about him. I don't know if you've seen that movie with Russell Crowe. And he won the Nobel Prize in 1994. And I thought, okay, no, I'm not doing as well as this guy. This is a brilliant man who had schizophrenia and couldn't work anymore. And he was just hanging out. Of course, after he won the Nobel Prize, he probably moved away because I didn't see him anymore. But the question in my mind now is, okay, 5 years from now, somebody here is going to give me a major surprise. I think it's going to happen. I don't know who, and maybe it's somebody else in the community who will step up. But somebody's going to give me a big surprise and hopefully achieve something that I could never do, something amazing. And I'm very optimistic that it's going to happen in this community. So I'll leave you with this quote. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And it's not evenly distributed in this room. Some of you are very savvy on issues of entrepreneurship and innovation and investment. Others are not. But that's okay. That's the opportunity to share. And the more open we are, the more we include other people in our circle, the better off we'll all be. Thank you.